What's going on, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, bringing you another edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys for your support, tuning in each and every Wednesday night at 8. Of course, as you can see from behind me, this is a pre-recorded episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm recording this as of Monday. Got some things in my schedule this week, so I wasn't able to go live, but at the very least, when you guys submit your comments in the comment section below, I will get to those at that live time. Usually I hop on around 8:30 and respond to some of your comments in regards to what I'm going to discuss today, which I think is a really important topic pertaining to our Buffalo Bills. Of course, the youth movement is for real. The youth movement is continuing. It's ongoing, this youth movement that has taken place in 2024, and it will take place beyond 2024 as the Buffalo Bills have plenty of draft picks in the 2025 NFL draft. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself talking about, picks and things like that in next year's draft. I'm looking forward to this upcoming season with the draft picks the Buffalo Bills did add to their roster about 2-3 weeks ago. So let's talk about those draft picks. Chime in and fire away some comments in the comment section below. Of course, as I discuss these players, give me your take on these players that I consider to be a part of Buffalo's youth movement of 2024 and beyond, as I know very well that, when you add a player of youth and value, that they'll be a part of the team for many years beyond their rookie season. So ideally, beyond the rookie contract, beyond those 4 years. So, of course, before I dive into the subject matter of tonight's show, the show sponsor is none other than 26shirts.com for all Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres, as well as Buffalo sports gear in general or Buffalo city gear in general. Go to 26shirts.com. So with that, let's get to the first player that I'd like to discuss in regards to Buffalo's youth movement. Yes, you guessed it. That is none other than Buffalo Bills' first-round draft choice, Keon Coleman out of Florida State University, the 33rd overall selection in the 2024 NFL Draft. Keon Coleman, I've talked about, obviously, these last couple weeks since he was drafted by the Buffalo Bills. But talking about Keon Coleman again, I want to emphasize that I was rooting for the Buffalo Bills in making the right pick. I want the Buffalo Bills to make the right pick leading into the draft. That's really what I'm thinking about, is how are the Bills going to make this pick? What pick are they going to make? Rooting for them to just make the right decision. Now I'm 2 weeks past that, and I'm feeling like now I'm rooting for Keon Coleman, the man. I'm rooting for Keon Coleman to do what he needs to do to be a part of this team for many, many years. He's very likable, very charismatic personality, and somebody that I think really embodies what Buffalo is about. They want as many, dynamic personalities as they can find. You need a little bit of that comedic relief in this game, as the game can get a little mundane, can get a little monotonous, but for a wide receiver to have the personality that Keon Coleman has, I think it's pretty rare. I know wide receivers come with a lot of personality normally, but I look at Keon Coleman as more of a selfless wide receiver, a far cry, evidently, from the recently departed Stephon Diggs as he was traded to the Texans, over a month ago now. So Keon Coleman, a big part of Buffalo's present and future. And, when I read a lot about these players, what other people think, to kind of, formulate my own opinion, as we all do. And it seems as if the word on the street about Keon Coleman is that he is a sure-handed wideout. He's a physical specimen, but he's not exactly one that can create separation. Well, we'll see about that, because I watched a lot of drills of Keon Coleman. I watched a lot of tape of Keon Coleman these last 2 weeks. And I see a guy that can get separation, can be physical, and can high point the football, which is something that the predecessor of Keon Coleman in that X receiver role, Stephon Diggs, was not known to high point a ball, known to go and attack the ball over the middle, known to go run the sharpest routes that you could run. Keon Coleman just brings a little bit more to the table, and he definitely brings a little bit more to the table in comparison to his other predecessor, Gabe Davis. And I've talked about how I feel like Keon Coleman is not necessarily Stephon Diggs' replacement, but rather Gabe Davis's replacement as a big-bodied wideout that can make dynamic catches. Now, next up is Buffalo's first-round draft choice from last season, a player that I was really happy that Buffalo was able to acquire and draft, I should say. That was Utah tight end Dalton Kincaid, who is now in his second season as a Buffalo Bill, coming off of a barn burner of a rookie season, just 24 years old. Dalton Kincaid had a phenomenal rookie year, and it was not only just a great rookie year, it was a great season for a rookie player at any position, pardon me on that, whether it be a tight end, whether it be a running back, whether it be a wide receiver in Buffalo Bills history, rookie history previously. Nobody had put up the numbers that Dalton Kincaid had last season, 73 catches in one rookie season. It was incredible. And I look at Dalton Kincaid as the wide receiver one for the Buffalo Bills for, the time being, until somebody emerges from that wide receiver position as the number one threat. You'd look at Keon Coleman to be that guy, but I think the structure of this offense is changing under Joe Brady, where Dalton Kincaid was the hot route option for quarterback Josh Allen last season, and I only expect better things. You look at Dalton Kincaid with Ken Dorsey. You look at Dalton Kincaid with Joe Brady, obviously two completely different seasons within a season for Dalton Kincaid. I often wonder to myself, if Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for the entire 17-game stretch, what would Dalton Kincaid's rookie numbers look like? Probably even better than what they actually were. So Dalton Kincaid, a huge factor, as it's widely believed that Kincaid could be the next Kittle, Kelsey, Mark Andrews type cornerstone tight end in this league. Many within the league look at Kincaid as a future great at the position. So this is going to be a very interesting season for him, his second in Buffalo and his second in his career, of course. Now, one thing that I noticed from last season in comparison to previous years is that it seemed like Buffalo really wanted to put an emphasis on taking a little bit of the pressure off of Josh Allen. Rather than Josh Allen feeling like he's got to be 90% of the offense, they really were able to establish what I'd like to refer to as a balanced offense. Now, a balanced offense can mean a couple things. It can mean balanced in terms of pass and run, balanced in terms of how the football is being moved via the pass. Is it short to intermediate? Is it, chunk plays? How does that actually break down? Whereas with Buffalo these last few years, post LaShawn McCoy, I don't think they've had a running back as dynamic as running back James Cook. And James Cook, the phrase is let James cook for a reason. Anytime Buffalo feeds James Cook the ball, their offense really seemed to dominate in games. Their offensive line especially was able to take games over, providing running lanes for James Cook. Look no further than Buffalo's game last season against the Dallas Cowboys, which was just a dominant pounding with James Cook largely being featured and fed the ball often. Buffalo has not had a running back like that since LaShawn McCoy. And with all due respect to Zach Moss, who is now in Cincinnati, with all due respect to Devin Singletary, who is now, of course, with the Giants, I should say, in East Rutherford. Both of those guys have played for two different teams since they left Buffalo. And I think a lot of that is for a reason. You won't see James Cook in trade discussions. You won't see James Cook, drafted and then gone as, draft develop and decide not to retain. I think James Cook is a massive priority for this front office to retain on a long-term deal once that time comes. That time is not now. He's still on his rookie contract, but my point is James Cook is a major priority to the success of the Buffalo Bills. And quite frankly, you look at this team top to bottom, you say, what is one player that could really take the pressure off of Josh Allen. I think it's more James Cook than just about anybody. You could throw Kincaid in that mix as well, but I think it's Cook even more so. So for me, James Cook, he is fantasy worthy of being selected in the top 4 rounds. At the very least, it could go even higher than that. You look at running back rankings, guys like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, James Cook, I think, should be in that young running back conversation as one of the best young running backs that the game has to offer. Now, is he going to run 300 times in a season? No, he's not. But can he get 1,100, 1,200 yards with 7, 8 touchdowns? I think that's very doable. And I do believe that he does have the hands. But there were moments last year where Buffalo tried to rely on him by getting him the ball in the passing game. And he came up very short for Buffalo in that regard. So I hope that that is a factor within his game that he's working on. Enter Ray Davis as his new backup. I think that you'll see Ray Davis in those positions as well, along with Ty Johnson. But to me, James Cook is the feature back of this offense, and I'm really excited to see what he brings to the table next season in his 3rd season as a Buffalo Bill. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir, he is my next youth movement member to watch for the Buffalo Bills. Of course, Khalil Shakir had a great second half to the season. He was the most valuable wideout to the team, including Stephon Diggs, in the second half to later half of the season. If you cut 2023, 2024 in halves, Khalil Shakir had better numbers than Stephon Diggs through the last 7-8 weeks of the season. So to me, this is another 5th-round gem that Brandon Beane was able to draft, that Sean McDermott was able to find for the Buffalo Bills offense. I'd wondered, his rookie year, why is this guy not in here? Because watched him in college. There's nothing that Khalil Shakir does singularly great, but he does everything very well. He's a solid slot receiver. There's not blazing speed. There's not blazing footwork. There's not beautiful routes. There's just consistency. And that's what you need from a wide receiver, especially one in the slot. Someone that can get open. And if he can't get open, somebody that can catch the football in tight windows and break tackles. That's what we saw from Khalil Shakir last season. And it showed to me that, looking at wide receivers in this draft, there were some guys, a Ladd McConkey that I really liked, right? I posted the Ladd McConkey dry erase board photo, no matter what, as a little bit of a pun on, a little bit of a play, I should say, on the Draft Day movie with Kevin Costner. I love myself some Ladd McConkey. He went to the Chargers. I think he's going to do really well. But Buffalo didn't take him because they have a guy that's very similar to Ladd McConkey already in Khalil Shakir. So that's how high the Bills view Khalil Shakir, and they should, because he was so dynamic for them last year. He had the highest catch rate of any wideout in the NFL based on his targets and such. So very excited to see what he brings to the table. And what we're able to, see post last season heading into this one. But make no mistake about it, Khalil Shakir, a big factor for this youth movement in Buffalo. Next up is linebacker Terrell Bernard. And to me, Terrell Bernard was one of, if not my favorite player on the defensive side of the football last season. I loved what he brought to this defense. I was not the biggest fan, or shall I say, I was a critic of his predecessor at the middle linebacker position for the Buffalo Bills, Tremaine Edmunds. Buffalo decided that they were not going to try to renegotiate, as the number just got to be too high with Tremaine Edmunds in terms of once he hit the free agent market. He was signed by the Chicago Bears for a deal on average worth $18 million per season, which I thought was way too high. And Buffalo did too. They wanted to have a replacement in waiting, depth, whatever you want to call it. Entered Terrell Bernard. He's just promoted from the second string to the first string. I thought he was one of the best linebackers in all of football last season for the majority of last season, which was his first as a true starter. Played as a reserve linebacker, played limited snap-wise in the years that Edmunds was here, while he was here, of course, and they entrusted him to be the next guy at the middle linebacker position. And I think for today's NFL, he is the prototypical linebacker for today's NFL. He's not the tallest guy. He's not the widest guy. He's not the thickest guy, but he's a quick nose for the football, sideline to sideline linebacker. And in terms of coverage, what's being asked from within offenses of running backs, what's being asked from offenses of their tight ends, what's being asked of offenses from slot receivers, as I just talked about with Khalil Shakir. Terrell Bernard has checked every box in terms of coverage-wise. What he's able to do in coverage is really what I think separates him as well, stopping the run. There were many plays where Terrell Bernard found a hole, ran right through it, and was able to get to the quarterback, slipped through the cracks, if you will. He's a very slippery linebacker, somebody that I think is only going to get better. And the fact that he played as well as he did last season and what I would consider his first season as a true starter, of course, really shows just how great he was as a prospect coming out of Baylor, just kind of entrusted to be that guy. Terrell Bernard, big things ahead for this young man, 24 years old, out of Baylor, and what is going to be a big bounce back season. I want to mention too, with Terrell Bernard, in regards to what I looked at as the X factor players. Last season, he was that guy. I look at Terrell Bernard and say that he was the leader of this defense and was somebody that Buffalo could rely on each and every snap. And once the season progressed, right, and Terrell Bernard got hurt, you saw the Bills defense falter. That's when the Bills defense started to come undone a little bit. I think he's the most underrated linebacker in the National Football League. I don't think he'll stay that way. I think more people are going to hear about Terrell Bernard. More people are going to know Buffalo Bills have a lot more than just Josh Allen on this team, and Terrell Bernard is going to be mentioned as one of those guys. Now, next, we stay on the defensive side of the football. You know, I had 4 offensive players and 4 defensive players, oddly enough. As we go to the second defensive player that I want to mention, what a rise for this player making it to the level that he has. The 6th round draft choice in the secondary, none other than Christian Benford, who is also 24 years old. Christian Benford was looked at as a late round draft selection with the hopes that he'd come in and compete. Well, you could hope that a player would come in and compete, but beyond that, you never know what they're going to bring to the table within that competitive nature. And Christian Benford took the starting job from first-round draft choice Kaiir Elam. And Elam, I still have faith in. I'm not going to look at Elam and say that he's a bust. I don't think he is. I think that there's just been a little bit of a role reversal for Kaiir Elam and a little bit of a schematic skill disparity in terms of what the Bills expect from him and what Kaiir Elam actually can excel in. So that's something to monitor. But in the case of Christian Benford, he's a player that I think schematically fits exactly what Sean McDermott wants to do and is able to just be put out there, excel, do what's asked of him, keep things simple, don't get burned, bend but don't break, right? And I think Christian Benford has shown moments where he can be a dominant corner in this league. He's also shown moments where there's some room to grow. There's some moments where you do see potentially why he was a 6th round draft choice, but those are few and far between. For a player of his age, 24 years old, player of his consistent starting ability, week in, week out, starting as a corner for this team, I think he's done a tremendous job. So I would be remiss to not put him on this list as far as the Buffalo Bills youth movement. So Christian Benford, Villanova corner, 6th round draft choice. Knowing what he's done these last few years has been quite incredible. Now, my next youth movement player is the new abbreviation for safety, SAF Cole Bishop, the 60th overall selection in the 2024 NFL Draft. The Buffalo Bills selected Utah's safety, Cole Bishop. And I look at Bishop in a few different ways. When I did the little, pregame, pre-draft, whatever you want to call it, mock stuff, Cole Bishop was somebody that I looked at and said, man, if Buffalo was able to get him somehow, I'd be pretty happy with that selection. And they were able to get him. Not only were they able to get him, but you needed a player of his caliber at that position, given what you have lost at that position. Experience-wise, you lose arguably two of the best safeties in the game today, Micah Hyde, who is on the outside looking in of retirement, and then, of course, Jordan Poyer, who went from Buffalo to Miami in what is probably the last year of his career. You needed somebody in here that's young, that's hungry, that's ready, willing, and able to show what they're capable of. And to me, that was Cole Bishop. And I really love this pick by the Buffalo Bills. I mocked Buffalo picking Cole Bishop tons of times. And I look at Cole Bishop as a necessary investment for not just the present, but for the future, of course, as investments usually are for the present and the future. Investing time, investing capital, investing development, stock, investment. There's a lot to like about his game, plenty of attributes that can help become even better in terms of experience. And this is an exciting player and an exciting featured player within this Buffalo Bills youth movement. Now, of course, the last player that I want to mention for the Buffalo Bills youth movement is none other than Gregory Groot Rousseau. He was extended, so to speak, on a fifth-year option, as it was the first-round Buffalo Bills draft choice in 2020. So very good news to hear that Rousseau is not just locked up for this year, but for next year as well. And I do expect a long-term extension to be done next offseason between the Bills and Rousseau. I sincerely hope so, because Rousseau is a player that I greatly respect, greatly enjoy watching, just flourish, grow, and prosper as a player. I think he's only getting better, and we're only starting to see those developmental traits pop off at the National Football League level. There are games where Rousseau, and with all due respect, A.J. Epinesa as well, who I could also put on this list, take over games, swatting balls down, the littlest things, forcing fumbles, but also making tackles behind the line of scrimmage as well, even ahead of the line of scrimmage. Both of those guys are phenomenal. Rousseau, I had to put on this list as a featured youth movement player. So there you have it. That is my list for the Buffalo Bills youth movement of 2024 and beyond. What do you think? Who do you think is a part of this Buffalo Bills youth movement? Feel free to comment in the comment section below. Of course, I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Of course, subscribe on YouTube, like on Facebook, and follow along wherever you tune into your podcasts on your drive home, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen. Thank you so much for the support.